My father leaned across the crisp white tablecloth of the French bistro, gesturing toward my brother's new fiancée with his Pinot Noir. "Don't mind Chloe," he said, his voice dripping with that sickening, practiced charm he used on clients. "She's our permanent work in progress. Still trying to find her footing in the real world." The woman, Sienna, didn't smile. She just stared at me, her brow furrowing slightly, as if she were trying to solve a complex equation. "My name is Chloe Vance, and I'm 29 years old. For as long as I can remember, I have been the silence in a family that only valued noise. My parents built a boutique investment firm in Chicago, and my older brother, Julian, was the golden child who followed perfectly in their footsteps. Their world was loud, polished, and obsessed with perception. They measured human worth in stock options, country club memberships, and the size of the engagement ring on a finger. And then there was me. I didn't want to manage portfolios. I wanted to disrupt industries. I started my own logistics software company from the corner of my drafty studio apartment in the city. My life was the quiet hum of a server rack, fueled by stale coffee and sleepless nights. To my family, this wasn't ambition. It was a failure to launch. They saw my thrift store sweaters and my refusal to attend their endless galas not as sacrifices for a startup, but as proof that I couldn't cut it. I think they loved me, in a way, but they were deeply, profoundly ashamed of me. What they didn't know was that my quiet little life was about to scream. Has your family ever treated you like a problem to be solved instead of a human being? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one. The entire reason we were at Le Jardin that night was for Julian's engagement dinner. He was marrying Sienna, a woman my family was practically worshipping. She was a senior partner at a major venture capital firm in Silicon Valley, the kind of woman my parents had prayed Julian would bring home. To impress her, they had booked the private wine cellar room. The air smelled of aged oak and arrogance. The dinner felt less like a celebration and more like a merger acquisition meeting. My dad launched into his usual monologue, exaggerating Julian's recent deals. My mom wouldn't stop complimenting Sienna's investment a topic my mother knew absolutely nothing about. I just sat there, pushing a scallop around my plate, feeling the familiar, heavy cloak of invisibility. Finally, the spotlight turned to me, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Chloe is still tinkering with her computer thing," my mom explained to Sienna, patting my hand with a pitying condescension that burned worse than a slap. "We keep telling her to get serious." Julian chimed in with a smug grin, adjusting his silk tie. "Yeah, we've offered to get her an internship at the firm. You know, answering phones, filing paperwork. Just to get her used to a professional environment. But she likes her freedom." Sienna, trying to be polite, turned her sharp, intelligent eyes toward me. "What kind of project is it?" Before I could even open my mouth, my father cut in, waving his hand as if swatting away a fly. "Honey, it's boring. She's building some app. One of a million out there. It's a hobby, really." He sighed, a heavy, theatrical sound that suggested my existence was a burden he heroically carried. For the next 10 minutes, they discussed me as if I wasn't sitting right there. They painted a picture of a lost, confused girl who refused to grow up. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, but I said nothing. I just focused on the condensation sliding down my water glass. The final insult came when the bill arrived in its velvet folder. My dad made a grand show of pulling out his black card. He looked directly at me, a sad smile on his face. "Don't worry about the cost, Chloe. I've got this. You just save your pennies for rent." The message was crystal clear: you are the charity case. You are not one of us. I just nodded, the silence in my throat feeling like concrete. But this wasn't new. This was just the climax of a lifetime of dismissals. A month before the dinner, my parents hosted a massive summer solstice party at their lake house. It was the event of the season: investors, partners, local politicians. I only found out about it when I saw the photos on my cousin's Instagram. My entire family, clinking champagne glasses on the dock. Everyone except me. When I called my mom the next day, her voice was light, breezy. "Oh, sweetheart, we didn't want to overwhelm you." It was a very high-level crowd. Lots of technical talk about markets. "We didn't want you to feel inadequate." Inadequate. That was the word. It wasn't an oversight. It was a quarantine. They were protecting their brand from the stain of my perceived mediocrity. The public humiliations were even sharper. Last 4th of July, at a neighbor's barbecue, my dad held court by the grill. "Julian is taking over the Asia accounts next quarter," he bellowed to a group of men. "And Chloe? Well, she's finding herself." He made air quotes with his tongs. The group chuckled. He used my life as a punchline to make himself look like the benevolent, patient father. I drove home that night with his laughter ringing in my ears. It was the sound of my own father telling the world I was a joke. The breaking point, however, was the phone call from Julian 3 days before the engagement dinner. "Hey, Chloe," he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "I was thinking, with the dinner coming up, I know things are tight for you. I can wire you $500. Go buy a dress that doesn't look like it came from a bin. I want you to look presentable for Sienna. First impressions matter." Presentable. He didn't want to help me. He wanted to curate me. He wanted to make sure his struggling sister didn't smudge the glossy image he was selling to his new fiancée. "Thanks, Julian," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "But I have something to wear. I'll be fine." "Are you sure?" he pressed. "I just want everything to be perfect." "I'm sure," I said, and hung up. What they didn't see, what they never bothered to ask, was my reality. What my family saw as failure was actually stealth mode. While they were playing tennis, I was on 4 a.m. calls with my developers in Zurich. While they were bragging about 5-figure commissions, I was closing a Series B funding round with a consortium of international investors who saw the global potential of my platform, Ether Systems. They heard app and thought games. They didn't know I was building an AI-driven supply chain network that was currently being bid on by 3 major shipping conglomerates. I was under a strict NDA until the funding closed. I couldn't tell them. So, I let them think what they wanted. I remember sitting at my desk the night Julian offered me charity money. I had just signed the final digital contracts. The valuation of my company was higher than my father's entire firm. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Back at the restaurant, the tension was suffocating. Throughout the meal, Sienna was the only one who seemed to actually see me. While my family talked over me, she kept steering the conversation back. "What market gap is your platform addressing?" she asked me, her voice cutting through my mother's chatter about floral arrangements. "What's your burn rate look like?" My parents shifted uncomfortably. They didn't know what a burn rate was. They knew how to sell houses and stocks, not build technology. Julian laughed nervously. "Sienna, babe, don't grill her. She's not in our league. You work with actual founders. Unicorns. Chloe is just playing around." He said it without malice, which made it worse. He truly believed it. The dam broke when my mother sighed, looking at me with tragic eyes. "We just hope she finds a nice, stable man to take care of her soon. Someone to pay the bills so she can stop this nonsense." Sienna's polite smile vanished. She put her fork down with a deliberate clink. She looked from my mother's anxious face to my calm one. I saw the recognition spark in her eyes. She leaned forward. "What did you say the name of your company was, Chloe?" My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. I met her gaze. "Ether Systems." Sienna's eyes widened. She froze. The room went silent. She wasn't the polite fiancée anymore, she was the shark from Silicon Valley. "Ether," she repeated, the word hanging heavy in the air. "Wait. Your CV Vance?" My father laughed, a nervous, confused sound. "Yes, Vance is our last name." "What's your point?" Sienna ignored him. She looked at me with a mixture of awe and terror. You're the founder? The ghost of Chicago? I just nodded, taking a sip of my water. Sienna whipped her head toward Julian. You said you wanted to introduce me to visionaries. My firm has been trying to get a meeting with CV Vance for 8 months. We have a standing offer to lead her Series B, but we couldn't get past her legal firewall. She pulled out her phone and slammed it on the table, screen facing my family. It was a Bloomberg article. The headline screamed, "The Invisible Unicorn, How Ether Systems Became a $40 Million Disruptor in Silicon Silence." There was no photo of me, just my logo. But the name CV Vance was bolded in the first paragraph. This is her? Sienna asked, her voice rising. This is the little project you were mocking? My father stared at the phone, his face draining of color until he looked like a wax figure. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Julian looked from the screen to me, his expression fracturing into shock, jealousy, and absolute horror. All the insults, charity case, failure, waste of potential, hung in the air, radioactive and ridiculous. I didn't know, my father stammered. No, Sienna said coldly. You didn't ask. For the first time in my life, my family had absolutely nothing to say. Their silence was the most beautiful symphony I had ever heard. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I simply placed my napkin down next to my plate. I stood up, smoothing the front of the dress I had bought with my own money, money that could buy this entire restaurant 3 times over. It was a pleasure to meet you, Sienna, I said warmly. Have your people call my assistant on Monday. We can discuss the Series B. Then I looked at my family. They looked small. Shrunken. I have a board meeting at 7 a.m., I said, my voice steady. Enjoy the wine. Dad, you've got the bill, right? I walked out of the private room. I didn't look back. I walked through the dining room and out into the cool night air of the city. The silence behind me wasn't the silence of me being ignored. It was the silence of a hierarchy crumbling. They didn't lose a daughter that night. They had lost her years ago, with every eye roll and every snide comment. Tonight, they just realized they had lost the privilege of knowing the woman I had become. If you've ever had to build your empire in silence while the world doubted you, hit that subscribe button. This is your safe space. If this story hit you hard, made you rage, cry, or cheer for justice, don't let it fade into silence. Smash that like button, it shows the world these raw, real stories of betrayal and triumph actually matter. Drop a comment below, tell us what got you, whose side are you on? What would you have done? Your voice fuels the fire. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Spread the payback, warn the betrayed, and let karma echo further. Subscribe to the Echoes of Revenge right now, for exclusive, gut-wrenching tales of strength, deception, and ice-cold justice you won't find anywhere else. Hit the bell icon, all notifications on, so the next explosive story lands in your feed the second it drops. Your likes, comments, shares, and subs keep these silenced voices alive, and sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't staying quiet, it's being heard loud and clear. Thank you for being part of this community. Let's keep the echoes ringing.